is the Audi Q2, and at first glance, it raises more questions than it answers. What exactly is it? Who's it for? What are its quirks and features? What are its rivals? And more importantly, is it any good? Well, we're going to put that to the test today, and we will tell you what's the good, the bad, and the ugly about the new Audi Q2. Now, before we begin, do remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and let us know what you think about the Q2 in our comment section below. And do remember to hit that bell icon so that you're notified about when we upload a new video. The Q2 has been on sale internationally in Europe since 2017. But to answer the first question, it is another Audi SUV. The Q2 is the new entry-level Audi that sits below the Q3 in India. When you see it in the flesh, the Q2 is actually quite a compact car. But as my ex-girlfriend can concur, size doesn't matter. However, if you're looking for something else, what the Q2 has on its side is ground clearance. So essentially, the Q2 is a luxury compact crossover that is designed to be the entry-level model to the Q brand. But unlike its elder siblings, the Q2 gets its own distinct identity. It looks strikingly different in comparison, and the proportions are more like a raised-up hatchback rather than SUV-esque. The hexagonal theme is quite prominent, and the Q2 has a funky look to it. At the front, the big Audi grille has the same presence as always. The headlamps are big and bold, and the bumper is muscular. In profile, the stance is quite old school with a boxy look and a touch of a sloping C-pillar. But the cuts and creases on the door panels give it that youthful look. At the back is where the Q2 looks the most distinct from other Audi SUVs in the lineup. The squared-up funky LED tail lamps and the sporty bumper give the Q2 a posh boy racer look. Ideal for the youthful customer base the Q2 is designed for. In India, there are no such direct rivals of the nature, but at that price point, the Volvo XC40, the BMW X1 and the upcoming Mercedes-Benz GL A-Class are the closest rivals. So if you're looking to evaluate other options, those are your choices. So on to the next question, is it any good? So let's take a look at the interior first. When you step inside, this is where the Q2 begins to truly show its age. The cabin is pretty much last gen Audi, and the layout is quite similar to the discontinued A3. But I would be lying if I said I didn't like these turbine-like air vents and also this neat looking dash trim which also glows at night. All of this looks really cool. But being an older generation Audi, you not only miss out on the dual touchscreen layout, you don't get a touchscreen at all. In fact, you have to use this knob and these buttons to navigate yourself through the Audi MMI system. It's easy to use as a user interface, but try using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto through this knob and these buttons. But the driver gets a really cool virtual cockpit, which is just as good as it has always been. It's well thought out and neatly designed, but it's just not as sharp as it is on the latest gen models. While the Q2 does get a large sunroof, wireless charging and a few other goodies, it doesn't offer powered front seats even for the driver. Now the Q2 isn't designed for the faint-hearted to be chauffeur driven around. But if you do find yourself in the rear seat, you'll find yourself with decent amount of knee room and headroom, unless you're 6 feet of course, or above. But sitting 3 people abreast can be a squeeze. Now the seat itself, I think the backrest angle is a little too steep and the under-thigh support can be improved immensely. But overall the seats are quite comfortable. You also have this center armrest with a couple of tiny cup holders. While there are no AC vents at the rear, it's a small cabin so you don't really need them at the back. The AC works pretty well on its own. However, there is something 2020 about the Audi Q2, and it's these USB-C ports to charge your devices, while people at the front only get USB-A ports. Luggage room is ample with 355 liters of boot space. The boot itself is engineered well for maximum space and easy to load and unload luggage. So that takes care of that. But what is the Q2 like on the road? Instead of pokey downsized engines in other bigger models, Audi has gone the punchy route. The Q2 is only available in India with a 2-liter turbo petrol engine. It's good for 188 horsepower and 320 Newton meters of torque. Being lightweight, when you put your foot down, it just lunges forward with no complaints. Acceleration from 0 to 100 takes just 6.8 seconds as claimed by Audi, and it really feels like that. The throttle response on the move is quite impressive as well. It feels really hot hatchery. However, if you're looking for a more relaxed driving experience, the engine does a fairly good job. It's quite refined, it responds obediently to calmer inputs as well. But what really makes the driving of the Q2 more relaxing in the city is that slick shifting 7-speed twin-clutch DSG we've come to know of all these years. I will admit, in comfort or efficiency modes, the sudden kickdowns take some time to respond. But that's what the dynamic mode is for. Just stick the shifter into S and plant your foot down, and the gearbox will happily hold the revs all the way to the red line over 6,500 RPM. So the Q2 is a European spec car, so the suspension setup is on the firmer side. Usually for India spec models, they would soften the suspension to make it ride a little bit nicer for our rough roads. But that firmer suspension setup is not necessarily a bad thing, because if the boy racer in you wants to push the Q2 through corners, well, the suspension setup and the Quattro all-wheel drive system will happily comply and keep you going in the right direction. You can feel the firm setup from the suspension when you're faced with a rough patch of road. But because of the well-balanced nature of the chassis, the Q2 doesn't get overwhelmed at all. It just gets along with its job. Oh, and that Quattro all-wheel drive we mentioned will definitely come in handy if you wish to take the Q2 through a loosely paved road. About the steering. What can I really say about the steering? Well, it's typical Audi steering that we've come to know of. It's not the most precise system in the world, but thanks to the chassis, complaints on this front would be just nitpicking. But can I have a little bit more feedback? Little bit more, please, Audi? Now, is this the best driving small Audi you can buy? Well, it's the only small Audi you can buy, so by that way, yes. Summing up all that we have spoken of today, answers to the questions are: yes, the Q2 is a small luxury crossover. No, the interior is not as nice as some of its rivals and could have come better equipped. It is a shame that we don't get the facelift model that is going to be on sale in Europe soon. But when push comes to shove, the Q2 does its talking in the ring, happily punching well above its weight. Mostly down to how well it actually drives in light of its competitors. So if you are looking for something quirky and interesting, and if you're looking for something to make you smile from behind the wheel, then the Audi Q2 will happily wash your hands off of 35 lakh rupees. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.